Chapter 857, Poignant. Ron committed suicide. His will accused me of forcing him to sell his shares. His family can even provide evidence. As Klein listened to the officer's description, he digested the relevant information and produced questions in his mind. After he understood the situation, his first reaction was, Baron Sindras has taken action. This powerful banker didn't hesitate to carry out his follow-up action against me after failing to cooperate with me, treating me as an enemy. He didn't hold back. Furthermore, he has clearly gathered enough information to know that Dwayne Dance is involved with the Church of Evernight and Member of Parliament Mact and the faction backing him. If he were to directly deal with me, it would easily attract unwanted trouble. Therefore, he chose to strike at the other end of the transaction, Ron. This will be more indirect and safer, but it would be equally treacherous and ruthless. This is an utter disregard of an ordinary person's life. Klein suddenly recalled the innocent people who collapsed during the Great Smog of Backland. He couldn't help but feel a sense of rage surge within him as it bubbled to the surface but was ice cold. Klein used his clown powers to control his facial expression, making him look even more surprised as he asked, seemingly finding the situation incomprehensible. Are you certain you aren't joking? The leading officer nodded solemnly. If we didn't have sufficient clues to support it, we wouldn't disturb a gentleman like you. Mr. Dwayne Dance, I'll have to trouble you to follow us to the station for further investigations. Despite looking unperturbed, Klein's mind was racing. Just as he was about to say something, he suddenly noticed something illogical. Regardless, murder is a serious crime in the current Lone Kingdom. With Baron Sindras's identity, status, and social connections, he will have at least a few dozen effective means to deal with a foreign tycoon that just came to Backland 2 months ago. There's no need to go this far. After all, as a member of high society, he will more or less understand or be in contact with beyonder powers. He knows that there are all kinds of incredible means to pursue the true murderer. Unless he's completely confident, taking the risk to frame someone for murder is definitely the worst choice. If Sindras were to use his authority to suppress the investigations of the official beyonders, it will definitely be more effective and simpler to employ other means. Even if he temporarily isn't aware that I'm about to work with the military, he's definitely aware of my connection with the Church of Evernight and Member of Parliament Mact. He wouldn't do things in such a simple and brazen manner. Most importantly, even if he's the kind of murderer who would kill for 3% shares, why didn't he do it earlier? He could have held Ron at gunpoint early on, resolving the matter without causing any fuss. Klein glanced at the officers in front of him, while in thought, without immediately giving an answer. And in an adjacent room, Zio and Fors were leaning against the wall. Using the latter's ability to open a small door, they didn't miss any parts of the entire conversation. What do we do? If the police want to arrest him, do we still provide protection? Fors, who lacked the experience of a bounty hunter, hurriedly suppressed her voice as she asked her friend. She never expected that the business conflict would result in a case of murder and suspicion of framing. The enemy she had imagined had transformed from an infiltrating murderous bandit into a police officer. She was momentarily unsure of what to do. Zio was also in a dilemma. Usually, a bodyguard will only deal with illegal encroachers. But they have given us sufficiently sizable remuneration. Fors was surprised and amused by the response as she asked, If he really is imprisoned, are you thinking of breaking him out of jail? Let's put aside the problem of danger. That way, you too would be wanted, and you won't be able to be a bounty hunter again. When the time comes, do you plan on fleeing elsewhere with this gentleman? As she spoke, Fors, who had already come up with a story, discovered that Dwayne Dance had a response. This elegant gentleman with white sideburns turned to look at Walter and said with a calm and gentle voice, 2 matters. First, visit Baron Sindras and tell him that someone is trying to frame him. Walter revealed a rare look of surprise and confusion, finding his employer's instructions incomprehensible. From his point of view, this matter was highly likely to be machinated by Baron Sindras. It was pointless visiting him, as it would only result in mockery. Klein smiled. He was a guest recently, and he had threatened me for the shares. Following that, Mr. Ron met with his demise. I find it hard to believe that he wouldn't be under suspicion. Therefore, I believe that it's necessary to warn him. This is what a gentleman should do. The officers were slightly perturbed by what was said. They had the inexplicable feeling that the matter was more complicated than they had imagined. As for Walter, he was somewhat enlightened as he replied, "Yes, sir. I'll immediately visit Baron Sindra's and inform your friends and his of this matter." This way, if this wasn't done by Baron Sindra's, all subsequent trouble would be dealt with by him. If he were the mastermind behind this, by involving him in the name of kindly warning him and spreading the news, it could create sufficient pressure from public opinion. It would make it easier for Member of Parliament Macht and Company to rescue him. Smart, a good butler really helps. Klein silently praised him as he continued. Second, please call for my lawyer to handle this tiny inconvenience. After instructing his butler and valet, Klein looked at the few officers in front of him. All right, I'll follow you back to the station. I won't make things difficult for you. However, I wouldn't answer any of your questions before my lawyer arrives. The leading officer heaved a sigh of relief as he said with a nod, "Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Dance." At this moment in the adjacent room, Force hurriedly said, "Are we following?" "Yes, I'll hide underneath the carriage now and follow it to the station. We can't be certain that those police officers are real ones," Zio replied rather cautiously. She paused, seizing the moment to ask, "What else do you wish to say?" Force thought for a moment and poignantly said, "Nobles and tycoons are truly terrifying." Zio was taken aback. She didn't speak further as she walked to the window. Supporting herself with one hand, she nimbly jumped down, landing in the shadows of the building. A few minutes later, Klein and two officers boarded a carriage belonging to Dwayne Dance. When he sat down, he looked at the thick carpet, his expression the same as before. At the police station, Klein was directly brought to an interrogation room. However, he didn't give a response, regardless of what the officer asked. Only when his lawyer arrived did he give an account. He said that he had only met Ron once. He also mentioned that the negotiation of the share purchase was completely handled by a professional team, hence, he didn't personally involve himself in it. He repeated his statements, saying that he was unaware of anything else. This left the interrogator at a loss until he was called out of the room. After a while, the officer responsible for recording the statement walked in and said, "All right, you may leave. A gentleman with an honorable status has vouched for you and paid for your bail." Klein didn't immediately stand up as he continued sitting in the chair. He looked up and asked, "Who is it?" The officer said with a respectful tone, "Baron Sindra's." Klein immediately revealed a smile as he slowly got up. He left the interrogation room with his lawyer before meeting up with his butler and valet. At the entrance to the police station, he met Baron Sindra's once again. This powerful banker's hair was still neatly combed back, with silver and black interweaving with each other. Beside him was a valet and his bearded bodyguard. "Thank you for your warning, Dance. Few people would be so calm and sharp when they encounter such a sudden turn of events." Sindra's smiled as he took 2 steps forward, reached out his palm, and shook Klein's hand. Klein replied with a smile, "I was simply trusting your character." Sindra's obviously didn't believe such lip service. He found an excuse and, with his bodyguard, boarded Dwayne Dance's carriage. As for his valet, he sent him off to his luxurious carriage to instruct the carriage driver to follow behind. As parasol trees flew past outside the carriage window, Sindra's spoke first. "Dance, how did you come to such a judgment?" Klein glanced at his butler and valet beside him and chuckled. 2 points. First, I believe that you will have a better solution. You wouldn't do something this violent. Sindra's drank a mouthful of white wine on the carriage as he chuckled. "Indeed." The corners of Klein's mouth twitched as he said, "I'm very curious as to what kind of methods you would employ." He had only asked in passing, without the extravagant hopes of obtaining an answer. However, Sindra's chuckled and said, "With matters developing this far, it doesn't matter if I tell you. It's very simple. Isn't your goal to enter high society? I plan to hire women of different ages. They will accuse you on different social occasions that you toyed with their feelings and bodies, but you refuse to be responsible for your actions. If necessary, I'll find a few toddling children to clasp you around the legs, calling you PA. Perhaps I might get some civilians to accuse you of seducing their wives and destroying their marriage. This is Lone, a rather conservative place. No one would wish to have such a person as a friend. Likewise, the Church of Evernight, who values marriage and family, will also distance itself from you. It will be difficult to clear the air on such matters, yet it wouldn't be a big deal. They wouldn't use their resources to help do an investigation for you. By the time you eventually find a loophole, your image would be hardened and known by all. How many people do you think will believe your explanations? You are just a newcomer and have yet to build a reputation. You aren't that trustworthy. Of course, if you were willing to accept my conditions, I'd stake my reputation for you. That will be the first step. Now it wouldn't happen. Klein was almost stunned by what he heard. He found himself too inexperienced compared to a seasoned banker who had established a commercial empire for himself. I believe I should thank you, he replied with an unfazed smile. Second, if you really wanted the 3% shares, I wouldn't be your match when it comes to wealth. It would ultimately be better to force Mr. Cuaron rather than killing him after the sale is completed. Sindras raised his right hand and pressed his fingers to the corner of his forehead as he chuckled. No, you're mistaken. I was bent on obtaining the 3% share. However, you're right about one thing. I did prepare an irresistible offer for Cuaron, but he suddenly made a decision and completed the deal with you at an extremely fast speed. It caught me by surprise. Klein narrowed his eyes slightly as he suddenly fell silent. Returning to 160 Birkeland Street, Zio circled the area and entered the third floor again, seeing Fours who had easily entered by using door opening. How is it, nothing happened, right? Fours, who had only followed from a distance away, asked curiously. Zio shook her head in a slightly wooden manner. No. She then revealed a poignant expression. Nobles and tycoons are truly terrifying. This is referencing Mark Twain's Running for Governor, a common piece of literature taught to Chinese middle school students.